Hi, and welcome to episode 107 of the Dinner Sisters podcast. We're two sisters taking on the nightly challenge of dinner. I'm Kate Schultz, living and working in Rhode Island. I'm a passionate cook and recipe collector, always thinking about my next meal.
And I'm Betsy Wallace. I live, work, and raise a family in Atlanta, Georgia. I love dinner time, but can always use help planning and cooking for my family of 5.
Our goal with this podcast? Well, we want to cook a little better, learn a little bit about food, and most importantly, figure out what the heck to have for dinner. Side note for this episode, we recorded this interview prior to the pandemic and folks staying at home and dealing with all the fallout that comes with that. But we know that in order to get through things like this, you might just need a little bright spot and escape, and we think this interview can do it for you. Also, her recipes are amazing, and even if your dinner party is just for your family or yourself virtually, which I recommend, we think this book will be fun. I've actually had a few cocktail parties, Betsy, over the computer lately.
Oh, that's really sweet. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Kate, I was thinking about this too because it is funny, the tone of it, thinking back only a few weeks, has changed so drastically. But I will say, I have been cooking out of this book for my family, and now is maybe a good time to practice some of these recipes that you will want to make for your dinner party guests once we're all able to gather again. And for a family like mine, it's always kind of nice to have dinner party-sized recipes, I'm finding, because it just provides us with some leftovers. And we have 5 people, and so that actually ends up not being too bad. But yes, we are also in the same boat. I am missing my eggs and flour, which I'm having a hard time finding at the grocery store. Trying not to shop so much. We're making some beef jerky and doing some projects. So I actually like this book too, because right now is project cooking is kind of fun. And this has some really cool project cooking recipes in it.
All right, Betsy. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about Susan Spungen and why we were so excited to get this interview?
Right. So Susan Spungen is a cook, food stylist, recipe developer, and cookbook author. She was the founding editor at Martha Stewart Living Omni Media from its inception until 2003. She was the culinary consultant and food stylist on feature films Julie and Julia, It's Complicated, and Eat, Pray, Love. She's the author of... I know, isn't that so fun? She is the author of Recipes, A Collection for the Modern Cook, What's a Hostess to Do, and Strawberries, a short stack edition, as well as co-author of the best-selling Martha Stewart's Hors d'oeuvres handbook. She lives in New York City in East Hampton, New York.
So, I mean, this woman has chops. You can say that for sure. And I love her attitude in her book about it, which is a gorgeous book, by the way. It's a beautiful shot. I would expect nothing less than a Martha Stewart alum to have a gorgeous... It's very, very pretty. But I also love her attitude about making guests feel special, but also like just making sure you've got it together. And I think she really helps you do that step by step. So I loved her cookbook for that.
Yes, me too. I really thought Susan's cookbook and her interview just gave me advice I didn't know I needed in the kitchen, which was so fun and such a fun discovery for me. So let's listen in.
Okay, Susan, thank you so much for joining us here on the Dinner Sisters today. And we are talking about your new book, Open Kitchen, Inspired Food for Casual Gatherings. And I've been so excited to cook through this book. And I thought it really spoke to cooking the way we live in our own kitchens. And a lot of our kitchens and a lot of our homes these days are very open in a both literal and figurative sense. So I appreciated the acknowledgement of that. And can you tell us a little bit about coming up with the concept of this book and why you wanted to write this specific book?
It's been a long time since I wrote this kind of comprehensive cookbook. And I feel like, because of the length and breadth of my career, I'm not really like a single subject cookbook writer. I'm really more about trying to embrace like a whole cooking philosophy. And so it's like I just really gravitate towards general cookbooks that help people figure out how to just sort of be in the kitchen and to sort of build their confidence, but also inspire them to cook and to try new things. And like I said, the title is really inspired by, this idea of both a physical or a spiritual open kitchen. I happen to have a physical open kitchen in my house, and it sort of made me feel like I had to approach my cooking, especially when entertaining, in a slightly different way, and to make sure that everything was kind of all done as much as possible and cleaned up before guests start arriving. Because I don't cook as well when people start talking to me or distracting me, and I like to also just have it done and have it cleaned up. And
I understand that, because even when I'm cooking just for my family, when people are talking and chatting and you want to catch up with people and you want to hear how everyone's day went, and then all of a sudden you burn your chicken that's on the stove, and that can just be it can be frustrating because you want to do both things and it's hard to do both things. One of the very clear through lines of this book is, when should I be cooking different parts of this meal? And it is a way, as a kind of relative newcomer to cooking, I'm 38, but as a lot of our podcast listeners know, I didn't really start cooking a whole lot until we started this podcast 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And we've now cooked over 300 recipes, my sister and I. And I am learning that there are just skills that you can pick up that are important in addition to the recipes, in addition to the knife skills.
Sure.
And this jumped out at me as something that I have not seen before in a cookbook. And it was just like kind of flipped a switch for me, where I thought, oh, I don't have to do all of this at once. Look at, there's a way for me to step this out and plan this out. And I think that speaks to your long career and your experience, and able to just take a whole philosophy like that and weave it through this book. So I thought, wow, this is, not only is she telling me how to roast this chicken, but she's telling me when to roast this chicken. And I thought, maybe as an example, I was saying before we started recording, I made the chicken tonata the other night, which is a recipe in your book. And maybe we can walk through a recipe, something like that, where you can explain why it's useful to do a little bit at a time to make yourself a less crazy cook.
Absolutely. Well, a less crazy cook. That's what maybe the title should have been. But but I'm so excited and happy that you really have not just picked up on that through line, but really embraced it, and that you are like the perfect reader for me in that way, because it wasn't something that you thought about. And I feel like there's so many recipes that don't address these things at all. I mean, occasionally you'll get that throwaway line like, you can make it ahead 2 days or whatever. But the truth is that my advice is a lot more granular than that, about like really which parts you can make ahead and how far ahead you can make them. Using the chicken tonata as an example, and just to explain what that is a little bit to your listeners, it's based on like a very traditional Italian dish called veal tonnato, which is very much a summertime dish. And I tell a little story in my head note about how I first really embraced that on a very hot summer night in Venice. But it's usually done with veal. But not only is veal really expensive, there are some people object to eating it. And honestly, it's just not necessary. I mean, there's chicken breasts are mild in the same way. And I've sort of turned the whole dish into kind of a salad. And a salad you can really get ahead, more of a platter than a salad per se. So up to 2 days ahead, and these are read directly from my timing tips at the end of the recipe. Up to 2 days ahead, poach the chicken and make the tonnato sauce, store in the fridge. I mean, it's perfectly fresh and fine to do that ahead, although there's something really nice about poaching the chicken and never refrigerating it, but it's not necessary. You can do it 2 days ahead of time. Up to 1 hour ahead, slice the chicken and wash the arugula. And then at the last minute, assemble the platter. I mean, this is a really simple one. There's some that get into like, more specifics than that. But I just feel like, especially when you're cooking and entertaining, having that information kind of at your fingertips, especially for someone like you that may not be used to, when can I do this? Is it okay to make this ahead? Is it going to get messed up? That kind of thing. It really helps to have that information right there and handy for you.
I agree, because I think there's an assumption that people know how to do more than they actually do. And I think
Right.
when I first started cooking more seriously or trying to expand my cooking repertoire a little bit,
Mhm.
I made assumptions that just were incorrect, or
Mhm.
I didn't realize I could do something like this. One of the reasons I picked that specific recipe is I thought, okay, this is very doable. And if I do
Mhm.
this, then I can probably make like the rose petal harissa recipe that's also in
Yeah.
there that looks amazing and beautiful. But I
Mhm.
thought I need to kind of work my way up here. And also, this is a great recipe for me to learn what Susan means when
Mhm.
she says, make this ahead and then
Mhm.
do this and then do
Mhm.
this. And then you will be
Mhm.
less stressed.
Right.
And it made so much more sense to me than what you were saying before, which is sometimes when people will just put a little end note that says, well, you could make this
Right.
ahead.
Right.
Like,
Right.
this is fine. And I feel like screaming, no, I need more help than that.
Uh, so how did it work out for you?
It was great. And, I had it just with my family this week, but I found myself, dinner is sort of ready. I'm just putting this platter together and it
Yeah.
was delicious. I think so often we think last minute dinners and last minute things have to be, you're making like a 30-minute, or you're trying to make one of these 30-minute meals that's really has all of the joy sort of drained out of it.
Right.
And
And
so,
sometimes they're more work because it's all about like active time at the last minute, right?
yes, and that's sort of this panic cooking.
Mhm.
And that is where I was before we started this podcast, was sort of relying on these last minute 30-minute meals because I thought that was the solution. And
Mhm.
cooking through your cookbook, I thought,
Mhm.
whoa, there is a third way here. This is something that I can do when I'm having guests over, but I can also incorporate this whole methodology into
Mhm.
my weeknight life and making my life.
Right. It's kind of limiting doing like a 30-minute meal. There's only so many things you can cook that way, and they all have to be also more expensive, quick cut cooking cuts of meat and things like that. When you've got more time, you can braise something that might take 3 hours, but you could do it 2 days ahead of time.
Right. And I thought the other thing I really appreciated from this book too is that it seemed to be there this 30-minute meals, or you can do kind of a meal prep and you have to do everything ahead of time, and it's just
Mhm.
now you're spending
Yeah.
an entire other day cooking. And
True.
I like, which doesn't really make sense to me either. And
Right.
so I liked how you were able to step it through and say, just be calm and rational about this, and like be thoughtful and see
Uh-huh.
how we can do this and put this together. And I appreciated all of your experience coming through on that.
Just love that you are embracing the philosophy here. And like you said, I think sometimes people use this sort of easy hook as, that's like the main focus. And
Mhm.
then, sometimes something gets a little bit lost in translation there. And I just want to encourage people maybe to take that extra step to make the recipe a little more next level. It might take a little more time or a little more work, but it's worth it.
That is one lesson I have definitely learned, because I spent the first decade, 15 years of my cooking just trying to make everything easy. And by doing
Mhm.
that, I think you drain a lot of the joy out of the cooking and also,
Yeah, I agree.
frankly,
It's
the
like a
taste.
race, right? It's
Yeah.
like beat the clock. Yeah.
Ingredients I would have bought anyways. Nothing
Right.
was really too out of the box, or maybe you spend an extra couple dollars. So I feel like it's a way to make your grocery budget work
Hmm.
for you better
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Did you fry the capers and everything?
I did, Susan. I have never done that before, and
You felt like a genius,
I
right?
did. And my husband said, "Well, I don't think I really like capers." And I said, "No, let's not do that. We're gonna try this." And I've got 3 kids, and people were just eating those capers up. That was
See, when you make it crispy and delicious, then people like it.
They do. I know. I thought, well,
Your kids ate the capers. I love that.
They did, and it was just such a fun night we had
Yeah,
with that
that's
dish.
great. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, it was great. Okay, so one thing we always ask our cookbook authors when we do interviews is if there is a secret favorite recipe that you hope people will try, that maybe you threw in there and thought, well, maybe this might go a little under the radar, but I really hope people will make this one.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many favorites that Yeah, all right. I'm going to say the sugar snap pea salad because that, those are coming into season really soon. And I just make that salad like on the regular when they're in season. It is so crunchy and delicious and flavorful. And again, it takes a little more work to slice up those snap peas, but it's 100% worth it. And, I had a friend who, she reminded me of this when she saw the book. She was like, "Oh, that was that salad I came over and ate that day." Like she came over and she was hungry. She's like a runner and she came to see me and she had that salad, but on a flatbread with labneh on it. And she was just like, could not stop talking about it. Now that particular recipe isn't in the book, but the sugar snap pea salad is, and it has mint and rice wine vinegar. It's just really a really good salad. It's one of those ones you can't stop eating if you like crunchy salads. I could eat like a whole tub of it.
I do love a crunchy salad. We've been really loving it. Someone posted a celery salad lately.
Yeah.
And one of the things that got people talking was like salads that aren't just leaves of lettuce.
Right. This one doesn't have any lettuce in it. And so it's also really good as a side dish because people can spoon it up onto their plates and then use a fork to eat it kind of neatly, like especially if you're not serving on a table, picnic or whatever. Yeah.
Good.
I love this salad, so I hope people try it.
Perfect. And I love that it's a nice spring recommendation because we are headed that way. I know everyone is excited to get there.
I know.
All right. So another question we always like to ask is, who are you reading or cooking from right now that's just really lighting up your kitchen with inspiration? Who are you following?
Yeah. Well, the truth is I'm on book tour. I'm not cooking that much. Last night I made like an English muffin pizza for dinner, But honestly, I mean, I have to say, even though I'm a contributor and I'm a little bit biased, I think New York Times Cooking is sort of have their finger on the pulse right now of both, solving your kind of meal preparation problems, but also bringing like so much inspiration and fun to cooking.
Okay, so to close, I have a few listener questions.
Okay, great.
Sue, who is a fantastic listener, longtime listener, and she's a fruit farmer in Washington State, wants to know what you have in your pantry or freezer to help with those unexpected open kitchen situations.
Well, I usually keep some like galette dough in my freezer so that I could always just throw a quick fruit tart together. I think she'd probably appreciate that. So whenever I make, I usually make a double batch of any kind of pastry dough whenever I make it because it keeps so well in the freezer. So, I also keep crisp topping for the same reason, because you can make a fabulous dessert in no time. All you need is some fresh fruit, and then you've got the rest already in your freezer. And it doesn't take that long to do. You don't have to defrost crisp topping at all, but galette dough, you might have to think a couple hours ahead and put it in the fridge to defrost, but you can, that makes like an instant incredible dessert.
I also saw in your cookbook, you've got these cheese, kind of like a cheese log cracker. I'm not sure how else to explain that.
Thank you for reminding me. That is a great example. So yeah, that's the cheddar, the smoky cheddar crackers, which are incredible. And those actually disappeared at my book launch the other night. I hired a caterer to make a few things from the book, and I love those. And that is like a cookie dough. You can keep a log of that in your freezer, and it does have to be warm enough, defrosted enough to get a knife through it, but that doesn't take too long. And then you bake these up, and oh my God, the smell and the taste, and they have smoked almonds in them. They're really, really, really delicious. Nobody can resist them. The perfect thing with like a glass of wine or a cocktail, and yeah, you won't be sorry making a few logs of those and keeping them in your freezer.
I thought when I saw those, I thought, ooh, that could make me a good host, like a fancy feeling host. Yes.
Yeah. You could also slice them and freeze them and bake them later if you don't want to freeze them in the log. Either way, it works fine.
Yeah. Okay. So Emily is asking, how can I be a gracious guest at gatherings?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think for one thing, always ask what can be brought if they need anything, especially at the last minute. Like sometimes people forget that they need ice or, something. So I think it's always nice to say, what can I bring or what do you need? And even if they say nothing, still bring something. But what you don't want to do is kind of mess up like a person's menu. You want to bring like maybe some chocolates, like small little chocolates, but not the dessert. And because they may already have a dessert planned, so you don't want to, mess up their menu or their plan. And I think flowers are nice, but sometimes that can be a bother for a last minute gift because then they have to find a vase. And so I don't really recommend bringing flowers, but I think some kind of a hostess gift is always a nice thing, whether it's a bottle of wine or, like I said, chocolates, or could be a piece of cheese they might enjoy later, or, it could be really anything. But I try to never come empty handed.
I think all that's just great advice. That gives us a couple things to just have up the sleeve.
Yeah.
Okay, Susan, thank you so much.
Okay,
I think we got a lot of information from this interview, and then also your book, Open Kitchen, is just packed with useful information here, which, again, we're so appreciative that you took the time to write this book, because I think that's no small thing on your part. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Kate, I was so happy that Susan made time to chat with us about her cookbook.
I agree. I'm always excited when we get these interviews. It's fun to share your conversations and my conversations with folks, with our listeners. So we hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it was a little brief interlude in what may be a trying time for everybody. And if you found any of these recipes that she talked about, or tricks and techniques, sound good to you, make sure to check out our show notes at dinnersisters.com. There you'll find links to anything that she talked about, and also any other recipes that you're looking for that we may have been talking about lately. And if you'd like to chat more with us, you can always ask to join our Dinner Sisters Facebook group. If you search Dinner Sisters Podcast on Facebook, you will find us there. You can ask to join the group. We would love to have you. We're having a lot of fun in there lately, since virtually seems to be the best way to gather. So hope to see you on Facebook.
So that's what's for dinner this week. See you next time on the Dinner Sisters. We'll save a spot at the table for you.
Would you like a little dinner in your inbox every week? Subscribe to our newsletter by going to our website at dinnersisters.com. There we've got show notes and other fun stuff. If you've got some dinner ideas, you can always shoot us an email at dinnersisterspodcast@gmail.com. Lastly, as per usual, if you like what you're hearing, please review and subscribe. Or maybe tell a friend over the phone. Tell them over the phone, stay home. That's how people get to know us. Thanks, and happy eating.